Welcome to the Dr. Eric A. Coleman Show. Today's edition is communication in marriages. And this is stemming from chapter 6 and chapter 7 in the book Paradigm as we continue to think differently about relationships. So please, ma'am, please, sir, if you have not already, please hit the notifications tab so that you can stay abreast to all the material and content that is coming forth on this platform. Please like and share, and most of all, subscribe to the channel. We got all the housekeeping out of the way. Let me go ahead and introduce you all to Patrick and Ashley Whittenburg.
Hey,
What's going on?
How y'all doing?
doing good.
Doing
Yeah.
good.
How about you?
Hey, I can't complain. For this episode, we are talking about marriages, which we know that is the crux of our communities as far as how we show up in our families and our households, how we influence our communities, influence society, then our nation globally, and even on a universal level. Let's go ahead and jump into some dialogue just to unpack some things, just to get to know you guys a little bit better so the viewers can know who you guys are. So I guess the first question will be for you all is uh fill us in on how you met. You know, what's your love story?
You wanna?
We met in high school in 10th grade, I believe. Well, I was in 10th grade. He was in 11th grade. And we didn't date in high school. We did like each other, but we did not date. And so time had went on, and I'm giving the quick version. And time had went on, so it had been at least 10 years before I think we seen each other again. He moved back to his hometown, and I think we were 10 hours away from each other. I was in one state and he was in another state. And so it had been about 10 years after high school and since 2005. Let me just call out the years. And so 10 years later, we seen each other. Um, okay, am I lying?
No, you're right.
I'm sorry. I don't remember.
I'm wanna.
2015. Yeah, we actually seen each other. Okay, I say that back. We seen each other before 10 years after 2005. Anyway, we seen each other somewhere just in passing. He was visiting in the state where I live, and I was just in a random place like a store, and we seen each other. It was like, oh hey, how you doing? You know, somewhere in passing. What you up to? What you doing here? It was just like one of those weird moments.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just like, okay, you know, about the relationship. He was in a relationship as well. I was like, okay, cool. Good to see you. You know, wow. We always have communication too, randomly through like social media, like, as far as friends to say, hey, how you doing? Or he's like, hey, what you up to in life?
Liking each other.
Didn't really think much of it. You know.
Okay.
And so then we visited, me and a cousin of mine visited his hometown because she had some family there. She wanted to reconnect with him. We visited. I had a chance to meet with him as well. And it started from there in 2014. We made it official and became a couple, and then we got engaged in 2015, and we got married in 2016. So everything happened really quick.
I'd like to add though, too. We wrote letters together. We wrote letters to each other in high school,
Yeah.
and I signed one of the letters, Mrs. Whittenburg, to her. So that was a little, God's providence. I feel like
Okay.
she was a marrying type, and a lot of years later we end up getting married.
Yeah.
And still got the letters to today to that.
Yeah.
Wow.
We both still had those letters, even through other relationships. I mean, I didn't know I had the letters. Well, up until I moved, into a home and was cleaning out things and found it. Like, wow. So that's how our story went.
I mean, it sounds like you guys started off on the communication ride really well.
Letter. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Or teenagers.
I mean, especially, it's funny you should say that because in chapter 6 of the book, I talk about the different forms of or communication styles. And, we got the verbal, nonverbal, written, listening, and visual. And it seems like you guys hit all of those, dead on in various stages of your relationship, whether you were together or just a distant thought from one another. So that's really beautiful to hear. I know I got an earful in 2014, 2015 when, Patrick would, hey, bro, I reconnected with my high school sweetheart, man, So he was very ecstatic and excited about the reconnect. So every time I would call him, I'm like, what you doing, Pat? Well, me and Ashley, we FaceTime in or we on the phone or, so you guys' communication was on lock. I will give you that. So bravo to you guys on that.
Yeah, may I add in something while you're
Yeah,
speaking that just came to mind? Even though we were dating and we were in a long distance relationship for about a year, we was in a long distance relationship. So it forces you to have the communication if you want the relationship to work. Um,
absolutely.
from my perspective, I have been in a long distance relationship before and it did not work because our communication wasn't there and we couldn't get on the same page. But when we got into a relationship, with some boundaries, we had to set some, things that was gonna work for us. But if it was gonna work for this long distance relationship, communication was like on point. It had the choice to be, or the relationship was not gonna work.
Well, that's a good point. Let me ask you, what was different or what did you guys agree upon to implement into the relationship for the communication to work? What was different about past relationships with the communication piece?
Wanted to be with her.
Commitment.
Yeah, that commitment of, she's somebody special, um, and just um, knowing that I wanted to work things out, wanted to
Mm.
to see her, with, I guess, starting out to like put my best foot forward, as we always do.
Absolutely.
Best foot forward. So it
Yeah.
forces you to when you're trying to,
I mean,
trying to please somebody.
we
Mm.
got had to act like we were in a physical relationship, like together. And what I mean by that, it was like wake up and we're talking, before we go to bed, video and throughout the day, maybe on lunch break or something like that. Like if you were
Yeah.
physically in the house with someone, having the video up while I'm doing things, cooking and he's there, even though he's not physically there, and same with him, or like he's at work and we're communicating or I'm at work or whatever. So not just communicating verbally over the phone, but also, the video and things like
Right.
that. Well, and also just date on video, just like what we're doing here.
Really?
Yeah, like, okay, are we gonna eat lunch together today? Yeah.
Wow.
No, like what you eating? I mean, we're having a conversation, and I feel like communication was, really good back
Okay, that's a good segue right there on that statement.
then.
Uh,
Things
yeah,
change, especially when you physically get with someone.
yeah. So it was very clear that there was a deliberate intentionality behind the communication piece
Yes.
because you were distant.
Yes.
And I'm just taking a stab in the dark here of once you become physically in the presence of one another, something shifted. I mean, that's just human nature. I
Yeah,
mean, the dynamics of the relationship shifted.
it's correct.
I guess that leads into the next question. Once you became face to face, what were some of the challenges that got in the way, or some of the realities that were present to where now we're not at the same level of intensity in communication from a distance perspective, as opposed to now we're face to face and now our communication has shifted. What did that look like?
Well, I guess I'll start off if he is in mind, but no, which that's also another important part. I think it's more so of just realizing that we really had to now learn to change in person. We need an idol in the house or something like that. Those are things we didn't have to deal with when we were in a distance relationship. Like, well, we have to communicate more. What's for dinner tonight? Did you cook? Who cooking?
Mhm.
What the work schedule looking like this week, or what we got to do as in together more so than doing things separately. So I think that was a barrier for us in the first year of our marriage because now we're sharing space together. We're not no longer on camera with each other. Well, I can just turn you off when I want to. I do my own way. And not worry because it's like, oh, we 9, 10 hours apart, versus no, we're here together. So now we really got to communicate. I think
Absolutely.
especially if it's like, oh, we have a disagreement or something like that, now it's like, okay, we actually have to sit down together now and communicate and still be in that same space instead of having our separate space.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think just to kind of add on to it, just in consistency of communication
Yeah.
that's tough. Like we mentioned, on the phone, during lunch or at night, it's a break.
Mhm.
Hour,
Mhm.
couple of hour breaks that we're not communicating.
Yeah.
When that we're living in the same household, it's constantly communicating.
Yeah.
And you'll see where you're constantly breaking down communication as well. So
Oh, yeah, and I want to add in there too some things that I seen in books. So now we get verbal cues that we're physically together. So now that throws in some real body language. Like,
Absolutely.
so it was your distance or video and stuff like that. Like, if I'm upstairs with dad, when we turn the video off and I go, no, no, just like, he ain't seeing that. I'm not seeing that. But now that you're physically together, you're seeing. So that also affects the communication.
Yes. Yes. And to that point, in chapter 2, I talk about a safe place and a safe space. And you alluded to it a little bit, Miss Ashley, that we can present one way on camera than we do in person. We allow the person to see what we want them to see. And we know that the camera or social media, especially in today's society, it's a safe space for people to do whatever it is they want to do behind the camera or behind a text message or on a blog or responding to a post. You can hide behind technology. This is a deeper question. What was it like when you guys came together and see that the communication level has to increase or the dynamic of it is changing? Did you have that same level of comfort in communication? Was it safer to do it over camera versus now you're having to communicate in front of this person and showing your vulnerabilities? Did you all create that safe space and safe place for one another to be able to do that once you came together in person?
I'll answer. I'll start off.
Okay.
No, because having that distance, I was able to hide some things, and when we did get together, I was still hiding things. And but when those things presented themselves, when I talked about them, then it's like uh, the communication. It was kind of like I don't want to say starting over, but it's like backtracking, like
Yeah.
digging yourself in a hole, and now you got to dig yourself out because of that lack of communication, not being fully transparent with her in several areas. So it was like, yeah, I dug myself in a hole because I was hiding behind the camera. And then when we really got together, I was still hiding some things. and it was hard to communicate. I never had to communicate with somebody like that ever in my life before.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, it was a big, big transition, and I'm still learning, still learning how to communicate.
Yeah. And just like what he said, and those are some things I did not realize, and just thinking like, for me, I was the same person. I mean, I communicated, and that's another thing too, because I thought we were on the same page
Mm.
with communication. So let's hope that. But like you said, it was kind of like kind of starting over, as far as establishing new communications, really just learning about each other. Um, to even know too, are we even effectively communicating with each other? Like,
Mm.
are we withholding things from each other? Um, if so, what are we? How are we going to talk about it? In a safe way. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, then
Yeah.
that's definitely was something.
I mean, because we could say all the time, this is a safe place, this is a safe space, or even when we're on our jobs and people say, well, this is the four walls of freedom. You know, you can tell me anything, it's not going to leave this office. But I mean, let's be honest, that's just lip service. That sounds good, but we know that we have to cultivate an environment to where people feel safe and vulnerable enough to share those things. Because I know even in my experiences in my marriage with Nikki and I, that was one of the major things for me to be able to open up. And I wouldn't even put it all on being, just from a man's perspective, but what I've put in my backpack, all the hurts, the triggers, the past experiences, the past relationships, what I carried into the relationship and how I was programmed, just me. And going back to what you were talking about, aside from the verbal, but the body language and the cues, it's if I'm sharing something with you about how I feel or how it's affecting me or my struggles, or with anybody, even if it's outside of my wife or it's just a friend, how you respond, not your words, but your body language, is a telltale sign as if I'm going to be vulnerable with you again. Because it's very interesting how people take, if I'm sharing my hurts with you, it's funny how people take your hurts and flip it to where your hurts offends me. And now we flip the whole conversation and it's like, wait a minute, hold up, how did this become about you? I'm trying to be vulnerable with you to tell you how I feel, but I can't even tell you how I feel because it's offending you and you getting in your feelings. So
Right. You have a problem with.
yeah, we got a problem. We got a problem here. We're not listening. We're taking everything personal. Again, that is about the baggage that we brought into our relationships, and a lot of times we are reacting instead of responding.
And yeah, and something to that
Yeah.
is important. And that's another thing, like he mentioned earlier about, things that he may have been hiding or the side of him that he may not have wanted me to know about or see. Or maybe just feeling like, oh, if I tell her or if she said, maybe he was thinking, how would she react?
Oh,
Or how would this affect our relationship? Or
yeah.
maybe. But I think what was so important too is to realize, like you just said, that stuff can come from your past, how you was raised or just different relationships in the past or whatever it may be, from the past that actually you don't even realize until you're older that it's actually, oh, I learned these behaviors from base, bring it into the marriage. And I think it's also important for the other partners to understand that as well. Once it's like, okay, it's not personal. It's not like it just came up or I want to hide things from you. But because maybe I'm used to doing this in my past,
Yes.
still doing that same behavior. So,
Yep. And that, I think, Patrick, if you want to jump in there, because that actually again is a good segue to the next question I have for you guys.
No, yeah, nah, go ahead.
Speaking of models and examples of relationships and marriages, What was that like for you guys growing up as far as seeing the model of marriage and what you aspired to be and what you think and thought it was supposed to be, whether it was fictitious or if it was just a fantasy of what you thought it may be versus the realities of it. But what were some of the models and examples that you guys saw as far as marriages and relationships growing up that affected the way that you intend to engage in your marriage now?
You want me to start?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So for me, um, I would say my parents were one when you said to see an example of a relationship. Definitely my grandparents. I'll start with my grandparents. So my grandparents, like, so I've spent like every day with them when I was little. So basically, they helped raise me as well. Like my parents. So with them, they were married for a long time. They really had healthy boundaries in their marriage. Even behind closed doors and in front of people,
Mhm.
my grandfather was a real gentleman to my grandmother. Like you don't find that these days. It's
Right.
rare.
Yeah,
I
right.
no offense to anyone, but I'm just saying it's rare. Like, and what I mean by that, like, he took care of the family. She didn't have to work. She didn't have to work. Yeah, she didn't have to drive herself. I mean, I could go on and on, but I seen an example that not only for her, but for his daughters, his kids, for us, it's grandkids. And I always knew, I was like, hey, that's what I want something like this. Like, he was like my best friend. He took care of me, everything like that. So that only tells more, like I said, as far as the things that I see and what I wanted. And I mean, I was like, man, I want what they have. I'm saying,
Mm.
he raised his voice at the woman. She might raise her voice at him, but I'm just saying, like, he was marrying just an amazing guy just sent from heaven. And I mean, it was just so crazy and mind blowing because I tell my husband all the time, I'm like, man, you don't see that anymore these days. Like
Yeah.
that's the definition of chivalry, what I see in him. And not just only to her, but to the neighbors, to the community. I mean, he was the church. It was just awesome. So that's definitely something I knew that I wanted alone for. The same, with my parents, being in a household with them, you know what I'm saying? They're not perfect, but they definitely had a healthy relationship. And I think they made sure for me and my sibling, that we saw a healthy relationship.
Mhm.
Not to say that they didn't have their tough moments or that they didn't have they or, whatever it may have been. But for the most part, I think they try to, keep some things away from us. I could be wrong, but I mean, they're not gonna get full
Yeah.
big old argument in front of their kids or
Mhm.
knocking each other out. That was just a joke. But anyway, so I think they really also, kind of set that, and even till until today, not just for us, but just for the younger generation, for the community, for the younger people that's going up, just giving words of advice. Just when problems come up, you know what I'm saying? Those are the type of people that you can talk to say, hey, and you're like, okay, we faced these issues before. This is what we did, or this is not going to, break the marriage or what, So I think that's really good too. And I mean, I've had a few good examples in another couple that's been married for a long time that I definitely look up to. And like I said, I think for me, the most important part of those relationships were just seeing how the man treated the woman,
Mm.
in tough times, or even if they messed up, but how
Mhm.
they come back together and still keep that peace and happiness and good communication in their marriages. And I think it's important these days because, I mean, as we know, the divorce rate is high.
Yeah.
So especially in this generation, the younger generation, people don't stay married like they used to. So it's always good and refreshing when you see people who's been married for 40, 50 years. And
Mhm.
I make myself clear, and I'm probably talking too much, but that's not always, a good thing because people say, I've been married for 50 years or 40 years. I'm talking about 50 or 40 years, and the marriage has substance to it. You know,
Amen.
and so I think that's important. I think that's something I always long for when I saw old examples. Like, hey, you just know they just supposed to be together. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mr.
And
Wittenberg.
He got a different story,
yeah,
and I hope that he actually opens up a little bit about it.
well, I'll just add on to what she said real quick about her influences, and I mean, I see that in her, like how she, as a woman, how she wants her family to be, her hard work, her consistency, her determination to, be, that woman and that have that example for her family and want her family to be that example for the community, like the past 2 generations she experienced or she saw. So kudos to the Greens and the Drummond. Like Johnsons.
He's so funny. He's so funny.
Let me flip the script a little bit on this one. It's kind of a two-part here. Miss Ashley, I want to piggyback on what you said about how you saw the example in your grandfather
Mhm.
of how to treat a woman. What about the perspective of any examples in your life as to how the woman conducted herself as far as how she treated your grandfather? And then the second part to that question is posed to both of you guys. We've talked about the positive influence or models of marriage and relationships, but we also know that there are negative examples as well that help shape and form us and how we desire to move and shake in our current relationships that say, well, I'm going to do that, but I'm not going to repeat that same thing of what they did, what I saw X, Y, and Z. So I just want to get you guys' perspective on that as far as, any examples of womanhood in your life, Mrs. Winberg. And then the second part of that question is any negative examples that you guys have seen to where it has influenced you on to change the trajectory or change the paradigm, to change your thinking and how you all move in your relationship currently.
Okay, so I'll start off with the female portion you just asked me about. So yes, I did leave that part out too. But I did say, like my grandmother. Oh, my grandmother definitely, she made sure, she took care of the household. Basically, she submitted herself to my grandfather.
Oh, you don't hear that word anymore. That's a taboo word. You don't hear that.
And I feel like because because and that's a big part of communication too, in a different type of way. I feel like because she submitted herself to him, he also he submitted herself. They submitted to each other. So
Amen.
when that happens, then they play roles very well, if that makes sense. They're on one page.
He made it easy for her to submit.
Yeah, he made it easy, and then, they made it easy for each other. So,
Mhm.
like I said, she took care of the family. She didn't have a problem with I mean, she cooked for him every day. That's something, really fine. I'm talking about her every day, lunch and dinner. She had
Yeah.
to cook every single day. Laundry. He didn't have to, be like, "Hey, you gonna do my laundry and you gonna cook my food, you gonna come here and clean up or what you doing?" She knew what to do, communication. But also, like I said, they made it easy for each other. And not just them, like I said, too, I go back to Tanya's my parents, for example. Them as well, I seen her submit to him because he made it easy for her to submit. Also, they made it easy for each other.
Amen.
But you did ask a question. You said maybe some negative things. I guess maybe I shouldn't really label it as negative, but because of those things, and I was like, "Oh, I want that too."
Mhm.
You when we got married, I think because of those things that I actually see within my grandmother and within my mother, I tried to do the same things because that's something I had learned. And as far as it didn't work for us. Like, it's kinda yeah, pretty much it. So, what I mean by that, and I didn't even realize is, I feel like, "Oh, I gotta watch Patrick Buggs. Like, I gotta do what they did, kinda," because that's what I see. And for me, I guess I would say it was negative because that don't work either. I'm not saying that, I mean, I say me to my husband, try to make it easy for each other, I will say that, but what I'm saying, I guess, is with now that I have to work a job, just like he has to work a full-time
Yes.
job. It's not always like he told me he seen this and he actually stopped me and was like, "Hey," because I was just kind of when they, I came home from work and I would get the ironing board, trying to iron his clothes, iron our clothes up. While I'm trying to wash dishes, and like, "Hey, what you want for dinner?" Trying to do all this.
Mm-hmm.
Good for me. I didn't realize that until he said, "Why are you doing all this?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I got to, like you my husband."
Yeah.
My father, and he was like, "Nah, I can't have my own clothes." And I was like, "You sure about that?" That's not I didn't see my granny iron his own clothes. What did I see my daddy iron his own clothes? Not so he was just making me know, like, it's okay to I know how to iron my own clothes. Like,
Yeah.
he made sure that I knew I'll put a laundry in. I can help. Like, we're going to work 50-50 at this. It's not
Yeah.
about like you. Well, I had to adjust to that and adapt to that because it wasn't normal for me. And it's what I feel because not only can the old people, okay, I didn't mean to say old people. The old people who's been together for a long time, well, the younger people can also be an example to them as well because my parents would see him doing certain things, and until this day, they'd be like, "Oh, you got a good husband, like, he ironing for you,
Hey, that's what's up.
he washing dishes."
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah, I'm serious, so it's like, yeah, but, for me, like I said, I had to adapt, something negative, I think, because of the simple fact, I feel like, even though my grandma, but that's what I'm gonna do.
I would say the negative would be more of probably religious things that um, our fathers or our grandparents, when it comes to things that they did, it was more doing it religiously instead of doing this. I would say maybe it was the whole art. When it comes to, for example, this is how I was raised. Um, we went to church, Sundays, almost every other Sunday, and it is something we did. But when it came to actually um, teaching in a home, and the why behind it, now your parents say, "Just do it because I tell you to do it."
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
well, stuff like that, like I think that had a negative impact on me.
Yeah.
The why behind what I'm doing.
Oh, wow, that's powerful.
Mhm.
Because I mean that's one thing that I really deal with a lot, especially in counseling sessions. There's an analogy that I use, the backpack of let's just say if somebody's going to the beach for a vacation, and the beach or the destination is just a simile for the word relationship, or who we choose to decide to get into a relationship with, whether it be a friend, coworker, romantic, what have you. Um, no matter where we go, we pack something in our backpack. Or when people talk about, your baggage that you carry around, and do we stop and take inventory of the things that's in our backpack? Or do we just pack on autopilot? Because if we're saying we're going to the beach, and then when we get to the beach and we unpack our bag when we get to the hotel, and we figure out we done left our towel, we done left our swim trunks, we ain't got no suntan lotion, we inadequately packed for the trip. And now we're going out there and we're spending useless money on stuff that's marked up in price because we need to get the stuff that we need there just so that we can engage in the destination that we have arrived at. So, for the example of a relationship, that's how a lot of us approach relationships. We got this stuff in our backpack, some stuff that's probably been left over from last trips, uh, you know, the last airport tag is still on the bag. You know, we got stuff stuffed away in little zippers that we didn't even realize that was in there. And, you know, so these are all the pains, the hurts, the unresolved issues, the triggers, the past experiences of childhood, what we've experienced and what we saw, what we liked, what we didn't like. And we go into these relationships and we have not done the personal work on ourselves to figure out, why do I feel this way? Why does Miss Ashley feel like I have to be superwoman in the household? You know, and not let my husband assist when he's clearly saying, I want to help. You don't have to do all that. I can iron my own stuff. But why do we respond that way? When we, you know, do we understand why we brought that stuff into the relationship and how we are showing up to this other person? And then at the end of the day, how we engage in it. So yeah, it's a lot of work personally to try to figure out ourselves, let alone trying to figure out somebody else at the same time. You know, in the
Like a
relationship.
lot different.
Yes.
Um,
And it's
so
also just while we on this too, it
yeah.
also goes into like parenting. So
Yeah.
when you raised a certain way, your parents, you know, they may have a way that they raise you, or what they think, you know, is good for you or what ain't good for you, and things like that. And I think that's another thing too. Then I realized, you know, as far as like my parents, I'm like, you know, they weren't bad parents or nothing like that, but I choose to, how me and my husband choose to raise our child. That's how we do it, you know.
Yes.
Other would say like, you know, well, you know, with that, I know I raised y'all like that, you know, we ain't do this, but we ain't do that, none of that. Well, we live in a different world now, so you know, now it's like 20 years, 30, 40 years. What grandma done did, and great grandma done did. And great grandma and grandma done passed away, but what they did ain't gonna work no more for this world. That's important, I think, for parents.
Yeah.
When we became parents, that's one thing we realized, like, no matter like, you know, what our parents did with us, me and him are going to communicate and agree upon what we're gonna do for our child with our child. What's gonna work
Absolutely.
for our family, you know, not what worked out in the past. So
And what we told, you know, grandma didn't have to work back then. You know,
Mhm.
women got to work now,
Mhm.
so the whole nother. That's
Yeah.
a
You're a totally different dynamic. You're right.
right, right.
one thing I will say, I knew that I was not going to, example or not, that I was not referring to the marriage. My grandma had 10 kids.
Oh.
So that's one I remember that's it. Grandma did that Ashley wasn't gonna do.
That was something you want to go replicate that?
Naturally 10 kids.
With that being said, what would you say have been some challenges and successes in your communication as a married union?
Well, I'll start if that's okay. Um, Challenges, definitely to communicate. Like, here's the thing, like, we've been married almost 7 years, right? And to me, I thought I was like, okay, you know, our communication good. You know, like we're a good team and everything. That's how I felt for some reason, right? And I really had a reality check. Like last month, it's gonna sound real crazy. Last month, we tried to put up a TV, right? We bought a new TV, and we're trying to hang the TV up on the wall. Now, him and someone else was gonna do it, like him and another guy, right? Well, for some reason, I don't know. It was just like, something just told me maybe it was the spirit. This was like, y'all do it together. So I told him one day, and I said, no, we just go ahead and do it and everything. No, no problem. So I thought this was going to go smooth. Man, it was probably about 2 hours. And
Sure.
it was almost 2 hours. Yes, it was. I told him time to start and time to stop. And the point is, got the TV up on the wall, right? But the step that we took, communication, was not good trying to get the CD up on the wall. And when I tell you, we literally almost got into an argument trying to hang this TV up on the wall. because I feel like I was like, man, you ain't even listening, man. I'm telling you, man, not, because I had one side, he had one side. And we had to get the other TV off. The other TV was really heavy, like really heavy. I told him, for me, I said, the TV is really heavy. He never lifted it before, but I know the other person did. So I said, it's really heavy is what I was told. So you got to be real careful when you take it off. I don't even think he believed how heavy the TV was until he actually got it off. And when it came off, everybody, we almost about to drop it, and it was coming towards my way,
Oh,
everything going on. So I realized then over something like bit small, like as she would say, I was like, man, somebody ain't listening to somebody. We had a conversation. We didn't listen out. Like, man, I thought we was a good team. I said, but that was just terrible. That whole teamwork was just trying to put the TV up and just, just see who's gonna take instruction from who on how we can
Mm.
not lift this or where this wiring gonna go over here. We had about 3 or 4 wires to get out the wall and put back into the wall. This was a big project for us, and it really kind of showed us like, hey, we don't know how to lift another commitment. Like, all we are
Mm.
different back and forth with this heavy TV in our hand and dropping on each other because we're not listening to each other.
Wow.
That small kind of showed me other things, I believe, as far as with our communication and teamwork. So we were like, definitely just trying to get some team building and teamwork activities lined up that we're gonna have to do together. And I told him, I'm saying, man, I don't even know if I'm ready to try to do it with you. Like, I'm gonna have to really it's gonna have to be like a calm and peaceful day because I don't want my blood pressure to get up.
That's one of the biggest things that I had to work on myself in our relationship, me and Nikki. Talk about in chapter 9, learning when to shut up and learning when to listen. That is a very big thing in any type of relationship, especially a marriage, when to just listen and when to speak. And that is a struggle between both parties because we both have things to contribute that are necessary to the relationship. And I do believe that was divinely ordained by God according to his dispensation of time for you guys to put that TV up because it peeled back a layer of that onion that you thought one thing about it, but he allowed you to see the reality of it, and that's a blessing.
Yeah.
You want to add something, Patrick?
Um, Now I just wanted to, I said we can kind of go back to how I was raised. I didn't,
Mhm.
I didn't uh, put my 2 cents in there on that.
Yeah.
So I was raised by a single mom for 14 of my, well, probably about 13 of my years growing up. And then I moved my dad. He got married. So they were my dad and my stepmom for maybe about 7 years or 5 or 6 years. So growing up, um, I didn't have the only example I had of actually like um, a husband and wife was my grandparents and my dad and stepmom. Um, and my grandparents, they had a and unique marriage. I'm not gonna go into that, but it was just growing up seeing that. It was um, it was interesting, say the least. And then my dad and my stepmom, they were cool. They kind of show some things under the surface, but it was at that age of my life, a teenager. Um, I don't think it affected me. I would say it didn't have a good example for me because she was my mom, but then it had some good and bad. I'll say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, But I would say I really didn't take too much from it. I wasn't truly, you know, w- what I saw in their marriage, I didn't apply to my marriage. So I don't think it affected me. Um, the only I would say the only thing that truly affected me is just them, you know, working together, being together, is having a having a father and a mother in the same household together. So
I mean, and that goes back to what we were saying that, you're able to pick and choose what you would like to implement and what you don't want to implement in your relationships moving forward, or in this context, how you operate in your marriage. Like, okay, what I experienced, what I saw, okay, I didn't rock with that. So I'm not bringing that into the marriage, or because that was jacked up, I'm vowing to be different. Me personally, I did not have the best examples of marriage, let alone relationships growing up in my family, in my household. And that was one of the major things that Nikki and I had agreed upon, that we would never raise our voice at one another. And it is a blessing. It's only by the grace of God that we're going on 15 years of marriage now in December, that we can honestly say that we have never raised our voice at one another.
Awesome.
We've had differences. Lord knows we've had heated differences. And that body language, will come up like, okay, I need to get out of her way, or she's like, okay, I need to get out of his way. We understand that, but we like, because we saw it so much growing up, and God forbid that is something we never want to present in front of our children. What you're exposed to, you think is normal. And especially what we see in society nowadays, there is a lot of stuff that is totally jacked up that is normalized. Bravo to you guys of what you are doing in your household. For Mr. PJ, that you were changing and creating culture and changing dynamics and paradigms so that he has a different environment that he grows up in, that he can mimic when he comes of age and has his relationships and things of that nature. So, bravo to you guys in that regard. Um, and I would say, the last question that I wanted to pose to you guys is, what would you impart onto somebody if they came to you right now and said, hey, we about to do the double ring thing, and we about to get married. We don't have the strongest communication. What words of wisdom could you give us?
say from a man's perspective, just be open and honest about everything. Get it all out on the table. No, so when it comes back up, you say, "Hey, you already knew about it." You know, show all your cards.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Show,
But
show all your cards.
I mean, but that takes courage and time to be able to do something like that, because again, like we were saying earlier, the the environment and the culture of the relationship has to allow for that, for someone to be that vulnerable, to show those deepest, darkest crevices of our lives. And it's some pretty dark and pretty nasty places that people have in their lives. God knows, I know from experience, that yeah, the other person has got to be willing, ready, and able, and not just in love with the idea of being in a relationship, but actually being in love with that person, to have their best interest at heart, for them to be able to be vulnerable with them. So that's a really good point. Mrs.
Yeah.
Whittenburg.
I would just say, first thing, premarital counseling is very important. I would definitely, that's something I definitely would say. Get premarital counseling if you have it, and just not from anybody,
Yeah.
somebody with some substance, somebody who, knows the Bible, somebody knows something about marriage.
Mhm.
It's premarital counseling. And I think it's important because that'll bring up questions that you might not have thought to ask your spouse that you may have not even known to ask. You'll have those questions that you have to ask each other and say to see if y'all are on the same page about the same things. Because like you said, some people are just in love with the idea of being married.
Mhm.
I think that's one good thing
Mhm.
about our marriage. I was I'm not saying I was against marriage. I'm not because God ordained marriage, but I was not never in love or like and most females usually are kind of oh wait and then have to have this and that. You know what I'm saying? I was more lax, like, okay, when he's in the one, like I wanted to be the person that he says and not who I actually choose. And I think the same thing for him, like he wasn't really trying to tell me I get married or they probably not even trying to be in a relationship. I wasn't either. So I think you have to really just be led by the spirit, let it happen naturally.
Yeah.
So you can make sure that you're lining up because it's very important the person that you're gonna connect with, you know what I'm saying, on the outcome of how your life goes. So
Oh,
if you be change and commitment, I would definitely give that as an advice. But like I said, definitely get premarital counseling. Just really discuss those important things such as finances, you know, family, if you want kids and not how many, just how like you said, relationships. And I mean, that's important too. Communication styles or communication. How do you react, in an argument or disagreement or whatever it may be? Um, or just maybe sometimes I think it's important too to talk about past relationships
Mhm.
as far as
Yes.
maybe they can give you an idea. Right. On the
Absolutely.
video, I you had a past relationship where, you used to dog your chick out and, you boy tried to work and chick did all the work and she took care of the bills and then I'm supposed to be like, well, I'm gonna be with that. I just need to hear some of your whole story. Tell me, tell me like the type of person you're gonna be. And that's kind of funny too. I'm just gonna add this in. I'm a little off subject probably, but like with Patrick, what I'm saying? I always felt like he was a good guy since high school. I had this little joke where I'm like, good church boy. It's what I used to call him.
Mm.
Never that be, but that was just my thing. I used to call him. And I would be like, good church boy or whatever. He was real quiet, just real sweet to any female. Um, so I mean, with him, it was just always hard to tell his motives, I guess, if that makes sense. Right. Right, yeah, I mean, a nice guy, maybe he's just trying to be polite, or,
Yeah, yeah.
just that's the type of person.
Play wrong.
Yeah, you never really know. But when we got married, we got married and I was pregnant and everything like that. I said, oh, okay, thank you for confirmation. But we got married and I think that's when we was pregnant. It was about to be married or whatever it may have been. Um, one of his ex girlfriends messaged me and it's just like, congratulations, I'm so happy for you. I just know you're gonna be like an awesome husband. And, I mean, she was just kind of pouring herself out for him.
Oh, wow.
Based off, I guess, the relationship that they had. And I guess, that relationship ended good. But what I'm saying is I blame her. I'm like,
Yeah.
because that just confirmed to me, like, I do have a good husband. Not to say I needed confirmation, but if his ex is saying like, "Oh, mate, I'm a good husband, I'm be a good father," he was such a great person. What I'm saying? That's showing what what may become of our relationship as well. So, like I said, I
Yeah.
think that's important too. You're trying to. I know people always say, "I don't go in the past and I don't look back at the past." Yeah, people have different pasts, and it does change. But those relationships, especially the most recent ones, if it's the relationship before me or that one, I mean, you can't be coming to me any kind of way, and then me expect you to change for me or do something different.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's important too.
I would say make sure y'all equally yoked. You know,
Yeah.
if you are a believer, follower of Christ, she has to be. That should be a non-negotiable.
Amen.
Um, because it when we when the tough get going, what is it? When the going get tough.
Yep, the
Uh,
tough get going. Yep.
Not ever.
so and that's what one thing that really stood out when me and Ashley reconnected. I asked her if she wanted to read the Bible with me. She said, yeah. Now,
Man.
um, something that really, struck me. And actually, at that point in my life, I was like, my relationship with the Lord was just getting started, really. And I was like, I'm not even thinking about a woman. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but no, in God's timing, He knew what I needed, and He brought her in my life and to make me better. But she had to be a believer. I mean, yeah, that um, wasn't a question or a non-negotiable for me. When I made the decision, okay, yeah, this is the woman for
Yeah, so that's important, I believe. Just setting those boundaries, just understanding, what is it that you actually need and what is actually that you want or that you're looking for in the other person. Um, because I mean, even things like finances, I know a lot of people say that's a big thing. Those are things that have to be discussed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even though one of the questions I ask them, I will tell anybody to ask, male or female, is what's your credit score looking like? Even though that I always the time that help. Like, what is your credit score looking like? I need to know because if my credit score messed up, you can't be messing up my credit score. I have faith in life.
credit score shows you a lot too. It shows
Yeah, it
you
does. It does.
bond.
Especially where your priorities are.
Yeah. So that would be a question. You know, finances have to be discussed. Like, are we gonna combine our money? Are we gonna have separate bank accounts? Because one person can be saying we're gonna have separate bank accounts, and the other person saying, "No, we finna have our money." Y'all ain't on
Mm-hmm.
that right there. Yeah, I mean, it don't matter if I can do it. All out on the same page about it. Right?
Yes. Yes. Good stuff, y'all. Any final thoughts about this topic concerning communication? Any other leaving thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think we got to I didn't answer the question about, I guess, some things I've learned that I've
Mhm.
been given almost 7 years about what I learned about what we communicate good on and what we don't communicate good on. I think for me, I'll start with the bad. So when it comes to, well, I'll say this. I'm talking about me. So I'm not a good listener. Um, so I have to be really focused to actually, and I have to write it down too. Like my memory is not, uh, I think it's not as sharp as it should be. So like when she's talking to me, like I have to be like dead focused on her. I can't be doing two, I, I can't be doing one thing and then listen to her at the same time and actually understand what she's saying. Like I have to like stop what I'm doing, look at her, focus, and probably write it down as well, especially. And as you know, women, let's just be honest, y'all brains are, y'all not talking about 4 or 5 different things at one time. So sometimes hard to keep track. So I have to be focused on exactly what you're saying so I can really retain it and actually do it. Cause one thing, she gets on me about is, this procrastination. She tell me to do something and then I don't do it. And it's because a lot of times I just kind of forget about it. So she communicates it to me, but um, I'm not receiving it and following through with it.
Mm.
So that's definitely a barrier and something that I've found out that, I need to work on. So, but a good thing is, um, I'm doing better at it. Like,
Amen.
I'm talking more to her. So, um, acting her advice. I am writing stuff down. Got a list of to do, and we're getting better. Like it's been going on 7 years now, and this is some things that I never done before in my own 30 years I've been before I met her. You know, 30 years of my life I never done before. So now, um, it takes time, and now I'm starting to get the groove of it a little bit.
It's a process. Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process.
Yeah, it is. It's just, it's also too, I guess it's important to understand each other's communication and not just like the type of like what he says. Sometimes I just feel like it's like he thinks I'm a mind reader or something for some strange reason. I guess supposed to know. If you don't talk, if you don't tell me, if you don't talk, I don't know. Like I ain't trying to guess. I'm not a mind reader. I think also too, like with me, when I communicate, um, I'm kind of like really just straightforward. If somebody's talking to me or communicating with me, I'm a good listener, so I hear them the first time. So it's almost like, okay, so I heard you the first time, or, whatever like that. So I don't need to keep repeating talking to me about the same stuff I heard the first time. Like, like so sometimes like with communication, know if it's like talking to me, no matter if it's him or whoever it may be, and if I don't really understand or want to get a good understanding of what you're actually saying, or how you want me to respond, I try to analyze it more, maybe by asking.
Mm.
And I think with him, like, I do that, or when I do that, he don't really like be willing to find it. Like, why are you asking me all these questions? Or even like funny, or she trying to be smart, like I suppose no, but it's like, no, I'm just trying to really understand what you're actually saying, not understanding it in my way. But I think that you're saying, like get clarification more.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think with us that became like a thing because he's like, "Why didn't you ask me?" I'm not asking those questions. The wife keep asking me those same questions. And I've explained to him, no, that's so I can understand. You know what I'm saying? It's like processing this thing or just, I'm a big analyzer. So I think that's important too, to just understand and getting on one page with each other about the communication style.
Fascinated.
Yeah.
Do the work like your book, latest download chapter. You have to put in the work.
You gotta put it in. You got it.
That's hard, man. 'Cause it's self work. It ain't the other person.
Yes.
It's work.
Yes. I mean, thank you for bringing that up because that was going to be really the last point. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Whittenburg, for joining us on today's episode of the Dr. Eric K. Coleman Show, as we have been talking about communication, more specifically in the realm and context of marriage. All of you viewing today, I hope that you have gleaned from this conversation. You fully understand that the work has to be done on you. We can't just sit here and look at the other person and always complain about what they're not doing, how we're not getting what we need out of the relationship. We have to take personal responsibility and accountability. The work initially starts with us. We have to take inventory of that backpack. We have to figure out, why did we pack the things that we packed? What are the triggers? What are the past histories? What are the unresolved issues that we carry into these relationships as to how we show up and interact and engage on a daily basis with people that we are in relationship with? So as we take this self inventory, as we take this introspective look and do the work on ourselves, not focusing on the other person, but focusing on ourselves so that we can be better, that we will show up effectively in our households, in our families, in our communities, in our society, in our nation, globally and universal. And so until next time, fam, till we meet again, continue to think differently about relationships.